Hello, Algebra 2 students. This is going to be our Unit 1 recovery for our Chapter 1 test. So, we're going to start by going over question 1. This is going to be the recovery video for question 1. Question 1 reads, for the following graphs, A, state which axes represent the independent variable and which ones represent the dependent variable. Answer in the table below. So, what's important here? So, the question tells me that I'm going to be working with my axes, and I'm going to try and decide which one is independent and which one is dependent. I'm highlighting those components because I want to know what I'm aiming for as far as the question. So let's go ahead and go down to our first graph. So because I know I'm talking about the axes, I know that my answers are either going to consist of our plant height or time and days, because that's what my axes are labeled. My x-axis is time, my y-axis is plant height. So I know that one of these is going to be independent or dependent, either independent or dependent. So I know what my answers are going to look like. So now I need to remember what these two mean. So independent and dependent have to do with one affecting the other. One is not affected, and one is affected. Actually, labeled that wrong, or labeled them incorrect as I was talking. Our independent is the variable that is not affected. Our dependent variable is the one that is affected. So, in my graph, does my time affect the plant height, or does my plant height affect the time? As we consider that and we think about that for a couple seconds, it should become pretty obvious to us that our plant height can't affect our time. As a matter of fact, very little, if anything, could affect our time at all. So our plant height isn't affect anything. Our time doesn't wait for the plant to grow. The growth is happening over time. So we're going to establish that our time is affecting our plant height. So the reason for that is that our independent variable is, you could think of it as how we're measuring what we're doing. And our dependent variable is what we are measuring. So we are measuring plant height. That's what we're measuring. Plant height. Let's go ahead and throw in our units there. And how we're measuring it is over time, days. So it is what we are measuring over how we are measuring it. And just as a rule of thumb, generally speaking, our independent is going to be our x. Our dependent is always going to be our y. So whenever you're given a graph, these thoughts and connections are very good to have and establish. But if you're ever in a pickle, your x is your independent, your y is your dependent. It is easy as that. Okay? So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at our second graph. So here we have, once again, we have age and height. Because we know from our last example, we know that our independent variable is going to be our x, and our dependent is going to be our y. And if we look at the situation, that again makes sense. Our height does not affect our age. However, our age does affect our height. So the one that is independent is going to be age, like it's spell, age in years. Once again, it's another variation of time. And our dependent is going to be our height. So that would be it for part A here. So now that we're done with part A, let's go ahead and look at what part B has to say. Part B, we have, says based on the shape of the graph and the label of the axes, write 1 to 2 sentences to describe the relationship between the independent and dependent variable. So what's important here? I'm talking about the shape of the graph and the labels, the axes. I'm going to write 1 to 2 sentences describing the relation between independent and dependent. What is going on? And then as a clue, I have my PERT acronym here. So I'm going to be describing the graph in such a way that I'm talking about the relation between the independent and dependent variables. Another way to say that is just what is going on? What is the situation talking about? Because I'm not just given a set of numbers, I'm given labels for my axes, which means this is describing a situation, which means that this is describing a real world phenomenon, a real world event. So, what are these graphs talking about? Is what I'm going to answer for part B. So, my clue is that we're going to use the CURT acronym here to help us organize our information. So, we have CURT. Of course, stands for context, units, rate, and time. So, what does each part mean? Well, our context is what is going on, what is being described here. And this is where we're going to talk about our axes labels. So, the context of this graph is we are measuring plant height over time. That is what this graph is describing. That is the context for this graph. I'm just saying what the graph is describing. The unit is what am I using to measure? Am I using hours, inches, minutes? What am I using? So for my time, I'm measuring in days. So my units is going to be days, and my second unit is going to be centimeters. Pulling that information just from my axis, days and centimeters. My rate, in this case, we're talking about our date. What is going on? What's the graph look like? So in this case, I would say that my graph is increasing and curving to the right. So I would say that you need both of these components because if we just said increasing, if we just said increasing, I could increase in multiple ways. I could increase like this, or I could increase like this, or I could have even increase like this. So I could increase in multiple ways. So you want to try and be specific. At the very least, you want to tell me the difference. Is it being straight or are we curving? So that's why I'm including this other piece of information because I need to know what the graph looks like. At the end of the description, I should have a pretty good idea in my head of what the graph looks like. So I'm increasing and curving to the right. What do I mean by time here? It's talking about my values that I'm using. So what values am I measuring over? I'm measuring from 0 days to 10 days. So I'm going to say that 0 to 10 days. So this is all the information I'm going to need. However, I'm not done because what the question asked me to do, it asked me to write my answer in 1 to 2 sentences. I can take this information and create a description out of it. So for our context, or excuse me, not for context. Well, for all of this, we're just going to marry it. Let's see how we can say it. So I'm going to start with my context and say that the graph measures the height of a plant in centimeters over the course of 10 days. So I'm going to look at that first sentence and I'm going to cross out what I've already included. Have I talked about my context? Yes, I've mentioned that I'm talking about a plant height over time. I've mentioned my unit and I've mentioned my time. So the only thing I need to include in my second sentence is the rate. I'm going to say it is increasing and curves upward. It increases and curves upward. So now I've talked about my rate. And do I need anything else? Mm, no, not really. Can you add more stuff? Sure. You could talk about our starting point or our ending point, and you could talk about how as it the rate of increase slows as it goes up, making it flatter and flatter. But as far as getting a description out, I've hit all the points I need to here. Everything else on top of this is just gravy. It's extra. It's the cherry on top. But this is absolutely what I'm trying to, what I expect and what we're trying to hit here. So this one we're going to call complete. Now let's look at our next graph, our uh, part B for our second graph. So once again, we have context, unit, rate, and time. Our context is going to be height over the years. Our units are going to be inches and years. Our rate is going to be linear, increasing. And our time is going to be, we're measuring from 0 to 17.5 years. Okay, so now we're going to take that information and we're going to make a statement about it. So the graph measures the height of a person over 17.5 years. So I'm going to look at my context. I've mentioned this. I mentioned years, but I haven't mentioned inches. So let me go ahead and go back and measure the height of a person in inches over 17.5 years. So now I've hit all those three once again. So my second sentence, I'm going to start it down here because I had that little addition in there. I'm going to say the graph is linear, increasing to a maximum value of, what is that, 7.5? 70 of 70 inches. So I actually could have just crossed this out if I'm going to include the inches information here, but having it repeat twice is not a big deal. So I said it's linear increasing, and I am done. And that goes over the recovery for question one. Are these the only two answers that I'll accept? No. So long as you include the information in your own words, I'm totally cool with that. Now, as far as being able to recover, we're going to go over to our worksheet and we're going to scroll down, or for you, flip your page over, and we need to complete this question in order to recover on question number one. So it basically is phrased the same way, and we are given two different graphs, and you tell me which one is independent and dependent, and give a description of the graph. My clue here is to describe how it's growing. Make sure a lot of us, what we missed was the rate part. Make sure we describe what the graph looks like. Because if you tell me everything else about it, I know what situation is being described, but I don't know what the information looks like. I don't know what the graph looks like. So let's make sure to describe how the graph is growing. That being said, if you have questions, please raise your hand or else come up and ask your question. And once you finish this, you are welcome to recover on your question number one. Thank you.